this country is at war with Germany.
We had to do a job, and we did the job, and that was it.
The men had to go and fight, and the women had to take their place.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
Hello and welcome back into the Foxhole. This week we are talking about something that is near and dear to my heart. We're going RAF this week. We're talking about the Dambusters raid. Now, as soon as I said those words, some of you might have perked up and gone, "Oh, they're talking about the Dambusters raid. You know, this is amazing," and it truly is. It is an amazing story, and I will hold my hands up. I knew about it. I knew roughly about it, but I didn't know all the ins and outs. So this was really interesting to dive into the nitty gritty and find out about the Dambusters raid. So, Katie, what did you already know about the Dambusters, and then what did you find out?
I already knew that they were in a plane and tried to bomb some dams.
Yeah, I mean, you want to sum it up? There it is. Yeah. You know. World War II for dummies, or Dambusters raid for dummies.
But yep, there you go.
They
find a plane and bombed some dams.
Yeah.
Well, their practice dam, the Derwent, is just down. Well, I say it's just down the road from me. It's in the neighbouring county from me, so it's not too far away.
Isn't there? I swear there's a new plaque. They put a plaque there recently.
Quite possibly. Not been for ages.
Yeah, I think I've seen something. I can't remember. But anyway, I digress already.
So I found that the idea of using dams as a target in the first place was thought of as early as 1937.
Yes, I came across that fact as well, yeah.
So the idea was that destroying the dam would stop generating electricity, but then would also, the mass release of water would also then flood the local land and just cause havoc further downstream as well.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the destruction of a single dam was equal to the destruction of a considerable number of targets further down the chain of an industrial energy system. So basically, if you take out a dam, you're well on the way to winning that little battle.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of crippling the infrastructure. That's the primary reason. And I found with that, that they had the idea in 1937, but it took until 1942 to develop a weapon capable of destroying the dams. Because the dams are difficult targets. You can't you've only got a small kind of section of the top of the dam, and if you think the altitude that aircraft fly at, even in World War II, that target is going to get infinitely smaller the higher you get up, even if you try and carpet bomb it. And then, if you're bombing the top of it, is that going to cause enough damage to bust the dam, basically? So yeah, they had to do a lot of thinking and do a lot of engineering to come up with a weapon capable of causing such havoc.
With the July of 1938, the Air Ministry noted that the Ruhr consumed almost 25% of Germany's water. Most of this was from the reservoir behind the Möhne Dam. They were starting to put ideas forward for breaching the dam, but as you said, there was no suitable weapon in existence to be able to do the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, war broke out, and efforts to find a way to destroy Germany's dams intensified. They thought of rockets, bombs, torpedoes, mines, paratroopers, and even a remote-controlled aircraft were considered.
Wow. You think of like the remote-controlled aircraft, like after the war with the trials with the remote-controlled B-17s. That's what I go to straight away. So yeah, kind of early stages of the war. It sounds kind of like harebrained schemes, doesn't it? And what can we come up with? Yes, we'll remote controlly fly either a Halifax or a Lancaster. That'll do the job.
Yeah. In May 1940, all previous schemes were reviewed and a new idea was put forward. This involved a surface skimming torpedo fitted with a hydrostatic fuse designed to detonate against the dam face.
Mm.
I mean, on paper that should work, but at this point, Barnes-Wallis became involved with the efforts.
Yes, very famous Barnes-Wallis. If there's any proper World War II nerds out there, you recognise that name straight away. I think his name is up there with R.J. Mitchell, the chief designer of the Spitfire. A boss with Percy Hobart as well that we've covered on the podcast before. I think he's up there as one of the well-known all-time great World War II kind of engineers / designers, I think.
So the Dambusters, as they were later known, were members of the RAF's 617 Squadron, who were specifically assembled in March of 1943 to bomb the 3 dams in Germany's industrial heartland in the Ruhr Valley. They did that just 2 months later. The raid on the night of May the 16th and 17th was called Operation Chastis. It involved 133 crew flying 19 specifically adapted Lancaster bombers.
Yes, and I am currently in the process of building the Cobby, or Kobe, I can't remember how you say it. The Lego version of the Lancaster Dambusters Lancaster, and yes, because it was the bomb bay, because the bouncing bomb that Barnes-Wallis developed, a normal Lancaster, although it was a massive bomber, because of the nature of this new bomb, had to be adapted. So even on that Lego model, you looking at it and you go, oh yeah, the bomb bay is way bigger to accommodate this bomb. And going back to Barnes-Wallis, actually, just quickly, wasn't it true that he kind of came up with the idea for the bomb because he was experimenting with bouncing marbles across a water tub in his back garden?
Quite possibly.
That's what I found, and I think that kind of sums up. It's very stereotypical, isn't it? Of just absentmindedly, he's just throwing the marbles. I wonder what this can do, and then just a light bulb moment of, oh yeah, I can transfer this to a bomb. And I think that you have to be a certain mindset to make that connection. So I thought that was a cool little fact that I came across.
Yeah. Bit of background on Barnes-Wallis. He was Vickers Armstrong's assistant chief designer. So we've covered Vickers in a previous episode. He came up with the idea for a unique weapon, popularly called the bouncing bomb, as you said, but known by its code name as Upkeep.
Yes, obviously, got to keep things secret. You can't be saying on the telephone or the wireless, sorry, oh, we've got this bouncing bomb, because then if the Germans hear that, they go, they've got a bouncing bomb. Oh, we need one. We need one. Gott in Himmel, get on it.
It was a 9,000-pound cylindrical mine that was designed to bounce across the surface of the water until it hit the dam. It would then sink. With a hydrostatic fuse, would detonate the mine at the depth of 30 feet.
Yes, and I read that it had that specific hydrostatic fuse, but then if that failed, wasn't it, that the bomb would detonate after, I think it was 90 minutes anyway. So it kind of had a backup, which is, when I read that, I was
something like that. When you're bombing dams, you're going to need a backup.
Yeah, exactly right. You've only got a couple of chances, because if you think about it, like you were saying, it was 133 Lancasters that were involved in this raid. And if you fly 133 Lancasters, the Germans are going to notice. So then if you try it again, they're probably going to beef up their anti-aircraft defenses, which then makes it more difficult. So I think that was the mindset of, we've got to get it right first time, because we don't know if we're going to have the resources, and we don't know if we're going to be able to do it for a second time, which is totally understandable.
You can't blow up dams here in England to test it.
Yeah.
So they made their own little models. Barnes-Wallis was assisted by the Building Research Laboratory.
Yes.
A team led by Norman Davy built, then blew up, several large model dams to determine the best possible point of detonation to cause the maximum destruction.
Yes. And this model still exists today. People, if you want to go visit it, it's in Watford. And it only took them 7 weeks to build that model, which is quite quick, considering, that there's a war on. And yeah, I'd love to go visit it. I mean, it is literally, if you just walk past it, I've seen the pictures, and one will hopefully magically appear on your screen by the powers of editing. But if you're just walking past that and you didn't think anything of it, you're like, oh, that's cute, that's cool. Somebody
Bit
somebody
weird.
made that. Yeah, yeah, it's a bit
Yeah.
weird. Yeah, yeah. You might go, why is that there? But to us people, we'd go, oh, that's so cool. And now I have images of me. This is going to be. If anyone saw me doing this, they would think he's lost his mind. I now have images of me in like wellies and like have a little Lancaster bomb just
Ew.
over it.
But some of these large model dams were a little bit too close to the locals.
Okay.
So apparently, unfortunately, the tests weren't to everybody's convenience, as an Air Ministry press release relates, and allotment holders were bewildered and annoyed when a mysterious and sudden onrush of water swept down and inundated their plots.
Oh dear.
So they won't be very happy about that.
No, no. I mean, you got to think of like the time frame as well. If there's rationing and those allotments for food, that's kind of a bit of oversight, isn't it? Maybe the Air Ministry should have kind of thought about that, before. But
Yeah.
hey ho.
So when they were testing the bomb, they found that in order to operate effectively, upkeep had to have a backspin imparted on it before it left the plane. So that's saying the bomb started spinning while it was still in its holder attached to the plane. So this required a special apparatus that was designed by Roy Chadwick and his team at Avro. Obviously, Avro build the Lancasters. There was initial opposition within Bomber Command of the idea of the Dambusters raid, with a number of key figures, including Arthur Harris, seeing it as a madcap scheme.
I mean, yeah, you can kind of
he
say.
had
I
a
mean,
point.
yeah, if you go to me, you say, right here, listen, Arthur Harris. So we're going to convert a Lancaster, then we're going to put this round bomb in it, and it's going to spin. It's going to spin, and then we're going to drop it. And from what
Then it's going to bounce.
then it's going to bounce. And by the way, you have to fly. You have to get your pilots to fly Lancers at a height of 60 feet, 60 feet. Now that is insane. If you think normally in the Second World War, bombers are flying at thousands of feet. Very famously, the B-17s, they would freeze up, and the pilots would get frostbite if they touched the metal they were flying at that high in altitude. So to drop this bomb at 60 feet just above a dam, no wonder he called it that.
Barnes-Wallis did stick to his guns and eventually won over the Air Chief Marshal, Sir Charles Portal. He instructed Bomber Command to proceed with the operation. So 617 Squadron was formed at Scampton in Lincolnshire, with Wing Commander Guy Gibson, who was its commander. Some of the airmen for 617 were handpicked by Gibson, but many were crews who had simply come to an end of their tours and were due to start their second tours. Gibson had to assemble his aircrew and all the ground crew staff and the auxiliary support needed in just 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's a tight turnaround. And I found actually it was quite a varied crew. So it was made up of British, Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, and USA as well. And with the kind of secrecy around it, I found out that with only a month to go before the raid, it was only Guy Gibson who knew the full details of the raid, the type of bomb and where they were going and what the target was. And that makes sense. It's compartmentalization, isn't it? You don't want everyone to know because, there's that very famous poster of, I might be getting the tagline wrong, but it's like loose lips costs lives or something like that. And I think that's definitely true with this story.
But with having Guy Gibson in charge and with him being so high up within the RAF, finding crews that were just starting their second tours, chances are he probably would have known most of them. So he can ring them up and be like, I've got a special job. Are you in?
Yeah.
And just sort of hand pick it that way. So it might have been a relatively not easy job, but straightforward job in that, right, he knows so many people, he's going to ring them all if they say yes, perfect. He's got his crew sorted.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Rather than worrying about, oh, I've got to get this completely green cadet, who's just on the first tour. Like, no
Yeah.
way. You can't trust a mission with such importance as this one with people who don't have experience. It's harsh to say it, but yeah, it makes sense.
They were then given just 8 weeks of intense low-flying training and technical prep before the raid. Like you said, nobody in the squadron except for the most senior members of it were aware of the targets until the briefing on the day of the raid itself. But security was still extremely tight, and the aircrew were instructed to tell nobody about what they were doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So they had 3 targets:
They did.
the Moan, the Eder, and the Sorp dams. Timing of the raid was dependent on a number of factors, obviously including the weather, the lunar cycle, and the ability to supply the modified planes and equipment. So May 16th and 17th was the only selected days prior to the raid.
Yeah.
So at which point they went, yeah, we're ready for it. Let's just go do it.
Yeah. Bit similar to D-Day, really, isn't it? You've got to get the right conditions and, with it being 3 targets, like you said, and they're all kind of in different locations. So the landscape around it, that kind of dictated the approach for the aircraft as well. So they had to consider that. So there's a lot going into this. It wasn't just right, let's do it. All the dominoes had to fall into place.
With a small-ish team as well, if they had everything and they were ready, the top brassers could have gone, right, we're going this afternoon, and they could have just done it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So May was chosen because it was when the dams were at the fullest from the melting snow from the mountains, and therefore would have had the greatest impact when the dams burst.
Of course, makes complete sense.
Yeah,
makes complete sense.
After being briefed, the aircraft set off in 3 waves on the evening of the 16th of May, each wave targeting a different dam. The Moan and Eder dam were both successfully breached, while the Sorp was damaged but not destroyed. The death toll, however, was fairly significant for 617. Of the 19 crews that had set out on the raid, 8 of them didn't return. So in total, 53 men were killed. 3 more were presumed dead, though later discovered they were taken prisoner and spent the rest of the war in a POW camp.
Yeah.
So the Vice Air Marshal of Group Commander 5 Group sent a message to Gibson. The disaster which you have inflicted on the German war machine was a result of hard work, discipline, and courage. The determination not to be beaten in the task and getting the bombs exactly on the aiming point in spite of the opposition have set an example others will be proud to follow.
Amen to that. That's what I say.
Yeah, at least they got a pat on the back for it.
Yes, well, Guy Gibson got more than that, didn't he? He was later awarded the Victoria Cross for this action in the Dambusters raid. And we were kind of talking off camera about this a little bit just before we came on, and I was saying that when I was doing this research, I was a bit confused. I was thinking, well, all the crew took part. They were all on the Lancaster. Why didn't they all get a Victoria Cross? They were all present. They did their bit. But we were kind of talking, and you raised a good point that because he's the pilot and he's the squadron leader, that's why you think he bore the responsibility, didn't he? He was responsible for kind of it going well, the whole raid going well, and the responsibility for the other men's lives, really. And digging into the kind of criteria for the Victoria Cross, it sounds like it's very strict, and that's always been my understanding. I've always thought that we're very stingy with the Victoria Cross, whereas perhaps my opinion of the Americans is they like to give out the Medal of Honor a bit more freely. I might be wrong with that. That's just my take. Numbers might disprove my theory, but I think us Brits we're very reserved, aren't we? We're very stoic. Blew up a dam. Oh well, never mind. Move on. Next job, sort of thing. Stoic club and all that.
But the press also reported on the operation as a great success.
They did.
Though for many involved in the raid, particularly Barnes Wallace, it was severely tempered by the loss of life in 617. Wallace wrote that, "For me, the subsequent success of the raid was almost completely blotted out by the sense of loss of those wonderful young lives."
Yeah, he's got it spot on there, and I think that's a very nice way, because he could have gone the route of, oh, aren't I amazing, and this is amazing, and the engineers were amazing, but he chose to kind of pay his respects to the men who gave their lives to carry out the mission, which was amazing. But on the other side of that coin, you've got the media, the newspapers of the time, and they had to kind of, not sensationalize it, but people know what newspapers are like nowadays. It's very grabbing headlines, so that especially back then, they had to keep morale up. So some of the ones that I found was the New York Times reported, RAF blasts two big dams in Reich. And another one was Ruhr power cut, traffic halted as floods cause death and ruin. And that is very dramatic, very, very dramatic. But I think that's obviously the Americans. Us, we're a bit more fruity with our language. So the Daily Mirror declared, torrent rages along the Ruhr, Huns get a flood blitz. And that just sums it up. The use of Huns, that's classic British, propaganda back then, wasn't it?
A lot of the pilots were young in bomber commands, like Bomber Command as a whole. So the average RAF air crew at the time was estimated to be as low as 21. Almost 3/4, so 73%, were hurt or killed in action. 56% of them were those who flew in Bomber Command. Overall, were killed in action or died of injuries.
The bombers, they really got the tough end of the stick. And I know the argument is, oh, what's worse, being a fighter pilot in Bomber Command, or a standard infantryman or a paratrooper, and they're all bad. We know each branch suffered in different ways, but when you look at those numbers, you think Bomber Command really had it tough.
So there was a bit of an oops moment on the raid itself.
Okay.
Obviously, the planes had to fly very low to deliver their heavy, unwielding cargo. Even the training was risky, the pilots making runs at extreme low altitude. To give some idea of, if you can't picture the 60 feet, on the night of the actual mission, one of the planes had to return to England as its bomb was lost when it touched the sea. So flying in formation over the sea, obviously a wee bit too low, and touched the sea, and the bomb just went.
But you got to think, I'm a big believer in, obviously everything happens for a reason. And if, let's say that Lancaster didn't fly that low and the bomb didn't, basically think and release, could that Lancaster have then gone on and be shot down and that crew be killed? I mean, I don't know if that crew was killed on subsequent missions, but I think that's a kind of sliding doors kind of moment of, what if could have happened if it had carried on.
Yep. The Dambusters has since been made into a movie.
And
it was a huge hit. So they used the direct accounts from Guy Gibson, from his famous memoir, Enemy Coast Ahead. It captured the risks and daring of the mission's authentic style and was a groundbreaking for its time. Released in 1955. It was also, so any Star Wars buffs out there, there's also a big influence on George Lucas. So it's inspiring action sequences in the original Star Wars movie.
I mean, it's the run of the Death Star, isn't it? It's the run of the Death Star. That's what it is, and it is.
Certainly is.
You think about it. Stormtroopers run on the Death Star. Star Wars is basically World War II, but just with lasers and lightsabers.
Lasers, yeah. So although the legendary 617 Squadron was specifically put together for the Dambusters raid in World War II, it was not their only period of existence. So they also served in Malaya until 1955. Then they were re-established at Scampton in May 1958 until 1981.
Okay, I did not know that.
See, 617 Squadron is still around. It's seen action in Iraq in Operation Telic 2003 before being disbanded in 2014. The squadron is now service again as of 2017, however, flying the state-of-the-art, the F-35Bs. That's very different to a Lancaster bomber.
I was just thinking that. God, yeah, I was literally just thinking that. I was like, oh God. I mean, yeah, what would Guy Gibson make of an F-30B Lightning compared to his trusty Lanc?
I'm going to say it might make life a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, less cumbersome, more agile. Yeah, God, a massive difference. And I found actually, that's kind of his modern history. I found that after, like, we've kind of talked about its reputation, 617 Squadron. So after the Dambusters raid, it kind of cemented their reputation and kind of they carried on as a specialist precision bombing unit, and they continued experimenting with new bomb sites, target marking techniques, and also they were tasked with trialing the new colossal new earthquake bomb that was developed by Barnes Wallace as well. So they've had quite a storied history, and unfortunately, one fact, a bit of a sad fact, that I think is still ongoing, that the site at RAF Scampton was actually due to kind of everything was to be demolished. It was going to be a housing estate, I think, or something like that. I can't remember. And our hero, I'm going to call him James Holland, famously got very irate about it because, he doesn't know where the artifacts have gone from. Apparently, there used to be kind of a little museum. It was Guy Gibson's office, and it was set up kind of as if he just left. It was kind of, frozen in time sort of thing. But apparently somebody from the Air Ministry came in or MOD probably, and just threw it all in a bag and took it somewhere, and nobody knows where it is, which I think is very sad. It's very sad because it's an amazing story. I know it happened 80 years ago, but if you want to drum up support to get people to join the RAF, show them that, take them there, talk them through this story, talk them through, the Battle of Britain as well. It's, if you want to get people interested, I think that's one way to do it. So I don't know why. Yeah, it makes no sense to me. Makes no sense to me.
No, I have no idea. Considering, well, there's only 2 Lancaster bombers flying now, one of which we have, and it has been, I believe, in the colours of a Dambusters.
Oh, okay.
Lancaster.
Yeah.
So it's just gone in for an 18-month overhaul and repaint. Can't remember what they're repainting it as. But I'm sure it has been, the last few years, a Dambusters paint job.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. And the other Lancaster that's flying is over in Canada, isn't it? That's owned by their kind of memorial flight. And there is hopefully going to be a third with Just Jane. I can't wait for that day. I really hope they pull that off, because to see, imagine that, 2 Lancasters, a bunch of Spitfires and Hurricanes all flying together. Oh, I can't wait for that day. Whenever that happens, I will be there. I will be there.
That's all I've got.
Yeah. So. I think. Yeah, that's a good. We've covered a lot there, haven't we, with the dams raid, and it's an amazing story. We hope you've enjoyed that look at a bit of RAF history. Obviously, I was in my element, all things RAF. But yes, if there's any other kind of missions, operations, things like that you want us to cover, do let us know. We are more than happy to dive into a specific topic. We will dive down the rabbit hole and bring it to you for your viewing and listening pleasure. So yes, thank you again. We hope you've enjoyed, and we will catch you next week.